Hey, Barry. Hey, Stacy.
Hello.
Can you hear me okay? Is my audio on?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
If somebody talks and they're muted, does their screen still turn a color like it does? Like right now, my screen's yellow because I'm talking, you know, the border. Wait, let me just find out.
Well,
You're probably in speaker view. Okay, now you're muted.
So my question is, if a person is muted, I'm still muted.
no.
My question is, if a person is muted and they speak, do the other participants know they tried to speak if they're off camera?
Only if we see your mouth moving.
Okay, thank you.
However, I'm on a desktop machine, and if I start talking and I'm muted, it'll pop up a little notice saying you're muted. It'll
But
tell me
only
that,
you'll see that.
yeah, it'll pop up a reminder that I'm muted.
Basically, the question is, if I'm off camera and I'm muted and I'm like, what a liar.
We won't
I
hear
don't
you.
know that I reacted.
We won't know that.
Okay. It wouldn't happen here. Here I would say it.
But how many times does it happen here?
No, because I would say it. Actually, that's not true. There have been a couple of times, not so much here, but a couple of calls where I hear somebody talking. I'm like, they are so full of shit. But it's usually not like a fact-based thing. It's usually more like, you know, they're giving an opinion or they're giving somebody a compliment that I suspect is not genuine, something like that.
The question is, what's the most appropriate way to say that?
I don't, it's not my business.
So
That I wouldn't say, it's not my
the
business.
version that I came up with years ago is, far be it from me to use you for such tumid balderdash.
And you remembered that.
Well, I wrote it down. I usually do it. I usually type it out because if you say it aloud, nobody's going to know what I'm talking about.
Once you see something in print, is that embedded in your head forever?
Not forever, but I have a very poor ability to recall spoken words, but I have a much better ability to recall things that I've seen in
You have
writing.
a phenomenal ability. You
And
have
especially-
above and beyond.
Especially if I write them out. When I was taking notes in class, I had to listen to the professor. I had to write down the notes, then look at the notes, read the notes, and sort of say them back to myself. So if I ran the material through every sensory modality, vision and hearing and speaking and writing, the more modalities that I used, the better I could remember it. If I only got it through one modality, like listening, forget it, it's gone.
So let me guess, Barry, when you're driving, you don't listen to audiobooks.
No.
In other words.
I do have the radio on, but I have the radio on to National Public Radio 24/7. And it's sort of running in the background. And if something comes on that sounds interesting, then I'll pay attention. But I have to hear something that sort of catches my attention. Otherwise,
But not only that, it gets repeated like every hour or so.
well, the news does, yeah. And for example, listening to the weather, I could never get the weather report oral. If somebody gave the weather report, I would, 2 minutes later, I'd go, wait a minute, what did he say today was going to be? What's the temperature? I don't remember.
Wow.
I have to see it. I have to see it in writing before I can have a chance of remembering it. And then if I turn around and write it back, that's why I write notes on Zoom. When I write notes on Zoom, that's the only way that I could keep track of what's being talked about.
The reason I read out loud is sort of the opposite of what you're saying, because I'm better off remembering things that I hear, not so good at remembering what I see, but the two together,
Right.
you know, it's a synergistic effect. So if
Right.
I read out loud,
Right.
then I sort of have it.
So, you know, getting them through, now the only one you can't get into tasting, you can't get into smell, but all the other modalities of, you know, seeing, saying, you know, reading, writing, you know, typing, all that really is, for me, essential if I'm going to remember anything. If I write my grocery list down, I don't have to look at it. If I don't write it down, I don't remember what I'm supposed to buy. The act of writing it down is good enough.
I take a picture of my grocery list.
I don't have a grocery list.
Stuff just magically appears.
No, I just remember it. I say it in my head.
I need potatoes.
There was a very interesting exercise that Richard Feynman did with a colleague of his named John Tukey. Sam, you may recognize the name John Tukey, mathematician who's most famous for the Cooley-Tukey fast Fourier transform. Anyhow, Feynman could keep track of time by counting in his head, and he could count in his head to 42, and that'd be 1 minute while he was doing something else. But the something else had to be something that didn't involve
Numbers.
the same part of your brain that does counting. And Tukey could do it a different way. Tukey could do something where he counted to I think it was 57 or something, and that was a minute. But the way Tukey did it is he imagined a ticker tape running across his vision. So as the tape ran, when the tape got to some number, Tukey could stop. So Tukey could do something that Feynman couldn't do, two things at the same time, one of which was counting. And the thing is that they used different modalities. They couldn't use anything that used the same modalities it was using for counting.
I just got to 42.
You know, this is interesting because the past week or two, I have been watching a couple of Robert Sapolsky videos and shared them. And he talks about the various parts of brain that affect personality, which to me is quite fascinating. And I know that I shared the one about schizophrenia versus schizotypal
That was a good one.
personalities. Yeah, that was an extremely
Can you
good
share the one you're talking about of the person with the different parts of the brain affecting personality? I'd like to watch that.
I think it's his episode 18. I believe it's called Aggression.
Yeah, it's 2 parts.
Yeah.
It's a 2-part video.
Yeah. And he talks about how certain, the one model that he introduced that I thought was really interesting was the amygdala and the frontal cortex, and how each attempts to repress the other. Yeah. And that if you've got consciousness, this is how you overcome triggers. But if you don't have full frontal cortex function, then it's very easy for the amygdala to overpower the frontal cortex. And then you're just operating on triggers and lizard brain, okay? And so that evolution that we have developed that has come up with that full frontal cortex has been so that we can actually move beyond just being triggered little lizards and chimpanzees and actually become human beings, you know? And I actually really love that language because we talk about triggers here in GCC a lot. Yeah. And we talk about taking care of people's triggers a lot. And I understand the intent behind it. But if we don't do it properly, then we're never really fully utilizing our full frontal cortex to actually achieve, you know, human plus behavior and, oh, by the way, being. And we're just being, you know, lizard being, not human being, you know? So I really like the fact that he explained that so clearly. And then, of course, then there's a limbic system he throws in there as well. So that, I think, is an extremely, extremely good video to watch. I really highly recommend it.
I'm going to find it. Try to find it.
Sapolsky's an amazing lecturer. You know, he just seems to be lecturing from from stream of consciousness, but it's full of citations, specificity, nature of experiments, specific quotes. I mean, that's an awesome brain that guy has. Yeah, just really
you could
amazing.
see him look at his notes once in a while. He'll look down very quickly to remind himself of the next point. But once he gets the cue, it's autopilot. He can just decide it.
It's probably an outline, and he's just put little mileposts, in his outline for various different themes, Yeah, the guy's a phenomenal thing. I wish I had taken his courses, but he probably wasn't there when I was there.
But they're all.
I might be older than the guy.
You found the whole playlist, what, 23 of them or something?
Yes,
you found?
yes. And I haven't made much progress because I like to go back and listen to sections multiple times to really, say, geez, the guy really said this, So I'm making slow progress.
One summer I watched the whole set. It took me about a month, I think, or so, many hours a day for close to a month to go through the whole set.
But that's, I think, asking my brain to do too much. I mean, there's so much material, and I like to give it, time to settle in, sort of make those connections with existing thoughts. So just blasting 23 hours in 23 hours of real time, to me, doesn't really allow those connections to form. And then, yes, I would have to go back and, rewatch, relearn, re-listen, et cetera, et cetera. So, I just do like an hour or two or so a day and really, try and let that settle in. And he's got enough material there that's going to last me weeks.
Well, it's
months,
a semester's worth of material or more.
Yeah. So be interesting for us all to, attain that level of context and background. And I wonder what that would do for our conversations.
And it's graduate level stuff. It's not high school level. It's not even undergraduate. It's graduate level content.
Well, the way he introduces it, it's quite achievable.
Oh, yeah.
It's quite accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, would people like to optionally check in?
I gotta check the phone right now.
Kayla, welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm making crepes for my kids.
Oh, how many do I get?
I don't know.
Oh man.
And then I've got to work a little bit. And then, today's going to be a good
Saturday.
day.
Life is good. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think Kayla's superpower is she can get a job, within 2 days, anytime she wants.
I know.
It's awful, but whatever.
It's not awful. 99.9999% of the world envies you, Kayla.
Well, what's really cool is I'm actually working on a FEMA related grant for the COVID-19. And this is with CalMesa, California Mental Health Institute. So it's been really cool and interesting, to be a part of that. But over here in California, we've got about it's nationwide, 32 institutions involved with that grant as well. And a lot of them, are institutions that have culturally diverse people. So it's kind of cool to hear everybody's story about the counselors and stuff. Of course, I end up with the finance portion of it, but I'm still involved in some of the nationwide meetings. And it's interesting to hear the counselors. So.
Hey, just out of curiosity, are there any of those institutions here in Washington State?
Probably.
And if you could just send me a reference, that would be very helpful to me later. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else to check in with, Kayla?
No, just hungry and, yeah.
Well, I'll check in then. The last several months have been just an amazing turnaround for me at work. Because I spent years at work basically trying to survive my previous boss trying to essentially push me out of the company. And I hate to say this, but were I not deep in my divorce, I probably would have just taken the hint and gone. However, the last several months, actually going back even about a year or so, I've been gradually being exposed to a number of different places. You know, I got to work directly with some of the very largest customers starting in 2018. I got to work on an extremely important customer escalation issue that seemed to accuse our platform of extreme instability. And I was able to address that and identify a different root cause that essentially made the customer appreciate the analysis and say, we'll take this for action and your recommendation makes sense. And then lately, there's been some challenges that my CEO has asked me to look into regarding product delivery, predictability, quality, communications, planning, et cetera, et cetera. And just this past week, he's asked me to hire 3 to 6 people, and he wants to build another team that actually is able to bring in new thinking, new architecture ideas, new culture, new processes, new communication tools, new tracking tools, new programming languages even. So I think that is an extremely interesting turnaround that I very much appreciate because it's so very different from several years when I was trying to just fend off my previous boss. So I hope I don't jinx it by saying it here, but I just have been feeling that, you know, it's an opportunity and a huge responsibility. I really think that our company, it's an extremely tiny company. It's, you know, it's 20 years old and it's been making, I don't know, we're at 70, $80 million in revenue. But the business that we're in, that analysts claim we have the top #1 product in, is a $20 billion space. So the opportunity is there if you're part of the old, you know, capitalist model, which, you know, we all still have to live in every day. So the opportunity to make an impact is up to us to fumble. So I'm going to try to be the unfumbler. Anyway, I thought I'd share that. Ronnie's been getting accepted to some other colleges ever since she got denied at University of Washington. We visited Western Washington University, which is actually a very nice campus. So that may end up being where she goes. And her best friend really wants her to go there because that's been her #1 choice all along. And they want to get housing together. So it looks like that might actually be a plan that comes together. And that would mean that she's only a little over an hour away, which is a lot more reasonable than a number of other places. Anyway, so that's what's going on over here. Anyone else?
I got my first COVID vaccine yesterday.
Oh, congrats. I did on
Nothing.
Wednesday.
Nothing. You know what? I had been trying to get an appointment for days, and all of a sudden something came up for like 3 hours from now, and I just grabbed it.
So they texted you with that real-time invitation?
No, I just happened to keep refreshing the page.
Oh, interesting.
And it, you know, I was getting frustrated because I was like, this part of my state had nothing. Everything was, anyway. So just a little soreness in my arm. It was great. I was
which one did you get? Did they tell you which one you got?
Pfizer. Yes, I got Pfizer.
Oh, really? See, Wednesday, I was actually visiting my doctor for a regular 2-week follow-up on something else on Tuesday. And Tuesday morning, actually, no, while I was sitting in the lobby waiting for them, I was going through the CDC eligibility test. And I said, yeah, I got this. Yeah, I got this. Yeah, I got this. But it's all the, you know, minor stuff. So at the end, it said, you are not eligible. Okay. So after my my follow-up checkup with my doctor said, have you gotten your COVID test yet? And I said, no, I just checked today and it's not eligible. And she said, wait here. So she goes away, and 2 minutes later, a nurse comes by and says, we have a slot at 9:30 in the morning. Would you like to come in at 9:30 in the morning? So I went in at 9:30 on Wednesday morning, got my Moderna shot. I've got the Moderna vaccine today. And 4 weeks from then, I already got my second appointment as well. So yeah, I like this clinic. The clinic is actually pretty good here.
That's good.
But I'm glad
And
you
the
got
second part of my check-in is
Sorry, I made it
that
all
I'm-
about me. Sorry, Stacy.
that I'm really looking forward to doing these questions. I've been waiting for 2 weeks.
Aha! I do have those questions. I do remember those questions, and I wanted to bring them up. And thank you for doing so. Okay.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I was just curious. Everybody else here had the opportunity to get a vaccine, or at least the opportunity to deny it?
I've had both my Moderna shots. I'm beyond the second week after the second shot, so I'm fully funded, or whatever you want to call it.
Fully vaxxed.
Fully vaxxed, yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Can I check in again?
Yes, please
I
do.
forgot. Duh. The way too many things going on in my life, but the kids went back to school. Yay!
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
I know, and I just can't believe it's been so surreal. And you know, just kind of driving them to school, seeing everybody walk there, like seeing them so excited and happy. You could just tell energetically in the morning. They get up by themselves, they're excited, they're ready to go. And as a matter of fact, they're reminding me to get out of the house. So, you know, it's been nice. I can't wait for these weeks to continue to blend and everything kind of go back to normal-ish. So I'm very excited and happy for them, you know, that they get to see their peers and get to learn in person and experience life with other people. So there's my check-in, or the
Nice.
rest of it at least. Over.
No vaccine here, nothing for me yet. So I expect end of April or beginning of May.
Alex, you're on mute.
Muted. Still.
You're still muted, Alex.
Can you unmute him, Sam?
No,
Let me see if I can. I didn't do anything on this end, but let's say ask to unmute. Okay, how about that?
he still has to do it himself.
Yeah,
That's just a.
I didn't do anything to mute any of you. So everybody's getting the same treatment here. Okay, I'm not singling out Alex. Okay.
No, I know that. I just thought, yeah, it doesn't even show he's muted on my controls.
Okay, Alex, can we hear you now? No, we cannot hear
He's
you.
not muted, but we're not getting any audio.
Yeah, it sounds like you don't have a microphone hooked up.
Next to your microphone button, see if you're using the right microphone.
Yeah, there's device settings or sound settings or audio settings, something like that. Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry, Stacy. I took up too much of your check-in. That was
No, I was
inappropriate on my
trying to
part.
be brief. I was trying to be brief. Actually, there is one other thing. We don't have to talk about it now, but it just reminded me. It has to do with critical thinking and the way we talk to people. So maybe if we could have some time after people check in, I just want to relay something that I had seen. It was actually a story about con artist psychics. So I'm just going to put that out there, just briefly.
Well, did you want to make that part of your 15 minutes that you get every day, every time?
Oh, I forgot about that. Sure. Yeah. That
And
works.
do you want to do it now, or do you want to do it at the end?
Let's do it at the end because it feels I don't feel moved to speak right now.
I sense that Stacy is coming up with a blank. Anyway, all right. So I did ask some questions 2 weeks ago. Oh, wait. Anybody else want to say anything before we launch into my set of questions? Okay. So 2 weeks ago, that was after about a week of thinking, how do I get what I want? Okay. Because interestingly enough, actually that triggers me on something else. This has been the saying that I've actually been, I can't even speak today, that I've actually been espousing for decades, which is people think that the toughest thing in life is this question, how do I get what I want? But to me, that's not really the toughest question in life. To me, the tougher question in life, which comes first, is how do I know what I want? and people don't often ask, or at least before then, I wasn't often hearing people ask, how do I know what I want? People are just asking, how do I get what I want? However, here in GCC, we have spent, I believe, somewhere around 3.5 years to, for me, come up, in my own mind, in my own formulation, with what I'm calling the 6 pillars and all the smart people problems and dumb people problems and collaborology insights, etc. So to me, there's actually quite a bit already spent on what I want. I'm not saying it's shared by everyone. I'm just saying that appears to me what I would like, and I would like discussion around that, and that appears to be happening. There's this co-visioning, coexistence, sense-making that seems to be generally growing in appreciation, as well as the more specific things around focus and agreements. But we still seem to be having a difficult time getting off the dime to sort of make quote unquote progress. We get this criticism all the time. What do you guys have to show? What have you done? Where do I sign up? What do I do? What do I read? Am I in? Am I out? All those kind of questions. And that's why I was thinking, okay, so what really could unblock any of that, okay, in my own barn-raising kind of unblocking way. So I thought about the way we interact with each other. I thought about what keeps us in our interactions well lubricated, so that they continue to go smoothly, as opposed to being really jerky and full of friction. And to me, that's where I started with this whole humor thing. Humor, to me, is so underappreciated that, when I get tired and I get sleepy or I get cranky, the first thing that goes is my sense of humor. I can tell it now, okay? It's not my focus, not my lack of attention. It's not my, ability to, follow through. It's the lack of my sense of humor when I am stressed. So that's why I started with those questions about humor, and then expanded to how does that fit in to the first 3 pillars of co-visioning, of sense-making, of coexistence. And it was a personal assessment the previous time, but then I was hoping that connections get made so that those of us who want to think this way will connect with others who want to think this way. Now, we have a very biased sample set here in this particular group, right? Because we've been talking to each other for years, some of us. Barry's the new kid on the block, but even so, he was here once or twice a few years ago. Actually, Kayla's the new kid on the block. Kayla started what? Middle of last year or sometime. So that's why I was looking at how do we each come to this knowing, or at least appreciating, that what we want to do is co-vision together, make sense together, co-create together, coexist together, and hopefully collaborate together. And all of those words can be repeated by other words if any of those words trigger you. But the sense is, I think, what's important, the sense underneath. So that's why the second time around, which is today, I wanted to get a sense of how possible are those connections. So I am thinking here, okay, so who else do you think has a good sense of humor? Who else do you think makes sense in a way that you relate to? Who else has a vision that really inspires you? Do you have difficulty coexisting with anyone here? Do you have any anticipated, alarms or concerns about collaborating with anyone here? And that's why I was getting this set of questions pop up, which is, how do I view, I being everyone here, okay? Ask personally, how do I view others' capacities to do these things? And then how do those others view my capacity to do these things? And that was the networking effect that I'm trying to create here. Now, those are very personal questions. So I do not anticipate that everybody wants to share and say, well, I think Stacy does this, or Stacy's, oh, well, I think Sam does that. That's not the point. The point is to see if we can actually find those in our own assessments and build on them. not for us to criticize anyone about their ability or inability to do any certain thing, but just to think of people as possible connections, which I think each of us already seem to be, but I'm just trying to expand the model to those just outside, and then, you know, beyond this group, and then, you know, hopefully beyond that. And say, if I think of these people, do I see a sense of humor here that's going to keep conversations going? Do I see a sense of leaning in so that we can actually overcome disagreements? Do I see an ability to focus so we can actually, you know, stay on a topic and actually, you know, attempt to drive it to someplace meaningful? Do I see a care? Do I see enough heart? Do I see enough activation in all those chakras to know there's a real human being there? And I can connect on all those levels. Can I make sense? Can they tell stories in the way that I can relate? Can I tell stories in the way that that person can relate? Those are the questions that to me seem very, very interesting in trying to expand a network that's trying to co-vision, sense make, coexist, explore collaborology, and then create a community of impact. So I just wanted to give you that context, okay? Now I know there's another question in Stacy's mind, but that's the context in my mind. So hopefully that's my story of why I came up with those questions. I'd be curious to see any feedback before I go into the specific question I know Stacy's asking. Okay, Stacy.
Yeah, so I just want to say that I hear what you're saying about humor. However, I think there's a lot that's being left out that's really important. So first of all, in order to find something funny, you have to see some reality in it. So just based on that, there'd have to be a similar way of looking at things to even recognize there's a joke in there, whether or not a person likes the joke. But what I think is more important or would affect more is that the challenge that I see with humor, the difficulty that I have with it, is that it sometimes goes over the line to mocking and shame. And for me, that outweighs the benefits of using humor. So I'll stop there, but I have tons more to say.
Stacy, I like it. I will connect with that share soon. Tees.
For me, it's always too fast. So I still don't know the 6 pillars, so they're not alive. So these are empty words at the moment. So then you go further and further and further. So I put it in the chat. I pick up the first words and then I miss the rest. So you say, do I see enough? And then you come with a rant and then I've lost your the whole content. So I'm not part of what you're trying to do at the moment, unless I know what the pillars are. And then you can write them down, but then it's too fast for me. Maybe also because it's not native language to me. So, and then, but it's really helpful to have the 6 pillars, have them alive, having humor, etc. So it's okay. But then taking even the time to re-listen, it's really strenuous. So if the pillars don't land in my mind, in my heart, and I cannot contribute, but I can listen and enjoy, and I can use it actually because it goes deeper in my inner being. So it's heard, but I can't put it into action.
Thank you, Tees. Let me address that at some point also. Alex, you have a hand up?
Yeah. My audio working?
Yes.
We can hear you. I can hear you now.
Well, there's a certain humor where some people get the joke, and like if you're a comedian on stage and only one person in the audience is laughing, well, at least that's one person laughing, so you're saved, right? It doesn't mean you're humorous to the 90%. You might not get the joke because your level of intelligence is either way up there or it's fall flat.
Yeah.
So I think humor is a good idea, but it's got to be appropriate.
Yeah.
It's got to be in the appropriate space. If you're talking about somebody who's passed away, humor doesn't go over very well.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Thank you, Alex.
I wanted to mention Tees's comment, which was striking about whether or not you feel if you're part of the cliquey group. If you feel like you're an outsider and the humour comes across as directed at you, even though it might be directed at somebody else you don't know, then that can be painful. Over.
Barry, did you have anything before I respond to some points that are still hanging?
I just wanted to clarify, because there were the 5 questions from 2 weeks ago, and if I'm not mistaken, there are 6
10
pillars.
questions.
And if it's 6 pillars and 5 questions, there's not a one-to-one mapping between the pillars.
It's not. It's not a one-to-one mapping.
That was the point. I think some people were confused about the mapping between the pillars and the questions. They're not. There's not a one-to-one relationship. There's 6
Right.
pillars, and then there's 5 questions, and they're 2 separate topics.
There's many other questions, but I started with those 5 that were deep in one of the pillars, and one of those pillars had a subnode that I called, actually it should be called lightheartedness. So Stacy and Alex, both of you picked up on this, okay? I did not actually expect all yeses to one of those sets of 5 questions. And this is the question you asked me 2 weeks ago, Stacy, so I'm gonna answer it right now, because I said one of those questions to me felt odd, okay? And it was this question, do you laugh at others? That gets at that notion of mockery that you were talking about, which I very, very much appreciate. I was going to bring it up if you hadn't brought it up, okay? So I use the word humor because people can understand, in a sense, what humor is, and it feels like, oh yeah, everybody ought to have a good sense of humor. And yet, I'm not talking about jokes. I'm talking about a lightheartedness and an ability to entertain other people's thoughts, and to do those in a playful way. That's what I'm really referring to when I say humor. I'm not talking about, making insults of anybody's condition or calling out, oddities in a certain other person. That's not the kind of humor that I practice or even laugh at, but I like having this light-mindedness. I guess some people say lightheartedness, but it's really like light-mindedness of being able to just, hey, oh, that's different than what I think. And oh, well, let's play with that idea. Let's see how it looks. Let's see how it fits. Let's see what the implications are. Let's see if one is, subservient to another, or whether they co-build into something else. That's a playfulness that I would like to see. And usually it does come with an aha, right? Which can come out as a laugh or kind of an expression of, kind of a light bulb going off. And that's the overlap with this humor concept. So that's why I thought in my own mind, that one question was one that I personally would have had difficulty answering. Do you laugh at others, right? I would like to laugh at those insights that we come up with together and can play with, but not that, oh, I'm laughing at this person over there for some other reason. Yeah, Stacy.
I'm sorry, before I forget this point, and this is the first time I'm making the connection, but I'm thinking that the same way you're saying that it sort of like releases a filter so that things flow more smoothly, I've seen it remove that filter so that people are a little bit more aggressive than they would normally be, all behind humor. So again, that's my concern. I mean,
yes,
when I'm really
agreed.
mad, I can be really funny, but that's not a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. These words are all dangerous. And that's why the more, sorry, Barry, this is not directed at you, but the more words I encounter, the more danger there is, because every word can be misunderstood or misinterpreted and mistaken and ingested, so.
But this is exactly why I think when something is a sensitive topic, refraining from humor is a better idea, because then you're more centered and you're not focusing on, at least for me, the creative part of being funny and going for that zinger. You're just really, you're more tuned in to how sensitive the subject matter is. You can laugh afterwards. I've been in like group kind of sessions where something really sad has come up, and at the end we just laugh because we're all sitting there with tears and it's kind of funny. That's a whole different thing. That's a group kind of cleanse.
Yes. it's definitely useful on the way out as sort of a way to sort of lean back, right? And say, wow, we did that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this humor thing is a sword that cuts multiple ways. I like the way in which it breaks down these barriers, but you're right. It could break down the underlying antagonism as well. And that's up to each individual to regulate. That's up to the prefrontal cortex to regulate the amygdala to make sure
Well,
that
and I
doesn't
think,
happen.
sorry, and I think that's why self-deprecating humor kind of works, you
Yes.
know, and we could all, you know.
That's right. See, once I asked the question about do you laugh at yourself, the natural question was to ask the other one. And I knew that was a dangerous question. So that was the odd question in my set of 10. And you just really just glommed onto that one. So
I do
It's
want to
prob-
say about your other questions real quick. The other questions that you thought we shouldn't answer, I thought that was the interesting part of it. I thought watching people answer those questions would be more interesting than anything else.
Stacy, let me turn this session over to you. I'm going to sit back,
Oh,
take
no,
those 10 questions. I would love to be part of that process. Okay?
I'm not
Stacy,
prepared.
you're on. You get more than 15 minutes now.
I've got a question regarding programming for Sam. This is a serious question, but there's humor involved because when you're talking to a program with speech to text recognition or vice versa, and the computer's understanding your instructions and writing the program, the problem arises when the computer hears you say something funny, because the computers don't understand the humor. They haven't got the sense of humor, and they'll throw an error or do a fit or return you to the syntax, refer you to the syntax of the language you're using to make corrections or to clarify that point. Over, just to take us on a side
Yeah.
track.
There's a lot of ways to get sidetracked on that point. Let me not respond until Stacy responds.
I had something similar. I was observing a conversation that Barry was having on his thread, and he and the other person were joking with each other, but I didn't know that. So when I saw this other person's comment, I got very protective over Barry. I didn't say anything publicly, but I private messaged him and I was like, do you know him? And Barry went on to say, yes, they're very close. But I mean, in that sense, I was like the computer. I had no way of knowing. And, you know, if I had been if I had been more from my lizard brain, I might have just, told the
back.
guy off.
Yeah.
And that happens on Facebook or social media a lot.
Facebook instigates it. They feed it to us.
Yeah, but we eat it. I mean, I don't anymore. I did a few years ago. That's what I learned. If you ever read what I wrote about, what I learned about Facebook, the world, myself and those around us, that's what it was about.
That's an issue with good comedians who are expert and they research their jokes well before they go on and perform. And we look up to them as examples, but it's a very difficult thing to do in real life, in real time. You can't ad-lib humor like you can if you're a professional trained comedian. So don't feel bad if you can't come up with something funny at the moment on the spot. It's not that easy, I can assure you, especially if you've got issues with your memory. Over.
Okay, thank you.
One more thing, real quick. You can choose what you're going to make fun of. So, for example, I could make fun of a positive trait. I could talk about Barry's incredible memory. That's a choice. And to me, that's the kind of choice to make. Many people pick that negative trait and joke about it. And I have so many things to say about that. I also find it cowardly and passive aggressive.
Very much. Yeah. That's why, I can listen to 15 or 20 seconds of a comic and know whether I like that comic's, modus operandus, and certain comics are difficult for me. I don't know if you guys remember Don Rickles,
Yeah.
the master of insult comedy.
Yep.
I never really understood insult comedy. I still don't. You know?
As an aside, he was the nicest guy, and I saw him in person. I was a little kid, and he gave me his autograph. But again, he only picked at the bullies. He never really, he didn't pick on, he shot up, he punched up.
Nice. Or punched up. He punches up.
Yeah.
Somebody I do like is Rodney Dangerfield. He's very much a self-deprecating character.
Yeah.
To me, he's hilarious. I don't know. Humor is another thing which, if we manage to understand it, could get us a whole lot further along towards how our personalities and brains and minds work, how our being human works. I'd wonder, at what level we can actually detect a sense of humor in chimpanzees or porpoises or octopi, I wonder.
Well, you got to watch a group of chimpanzees, and if one of them's doing something unusual and the rest of the crowd are doubling up, then you know they've got a sense of humor.
And we think they do laugh, right? We do think that, we see occasional laughter in the ape world. Yeah.
I feel like my dog has a sense of humor. I'm honest, being 100%. I can't let him off his leash because he runs away from me and he stares at me with this little weird wolfy smile. And then if I get close to him, he smiles even bigger and starts running away even more. So I think animals have a sense of humor. Yeah. I don't know if they would call it a sense of humor, but something of the like.
It's definitely a game you're playing. Yeah. So, Stacy, since you inspire me by saying those 10 questions I did end with would be good to hear people's responses on, how would you propose we do this? Because I wasn't necessarily going to ask people to be that transparent, although I think it's great if people are willing to be. I was imagining the following after you said that, okay, which is to take each of those questions, like, who else thinks that I'm a good person in co-visioning with? Or who else thinks I am a good person to sense make with? Or who else thinks I'm a good person to, let's say, coexist with? Or who else thinks I'm a good person to, and you just go down the list of questions, right? And I wouldn't necessarily say, okay, let me go through the 12 people and just always give my assessment, but I might pick out the number one. In other words, when I say co-vision, the person that I've heard say they would like to co-vision with me, or I would like to co-vision with them, I know who that person is, right? And if I say coexist, I also know who that person is. And if I say sense make, I know who that person is, because those themes are common in conversations between us when we go into one-on-one. So that might be a way to proceed. How do people feel about that?
I thought similarly, but I thought at least two people. Just to make it so it's not like, there's only one.
Mm-hmm.
Barry?
When I wrote my notes 2 weeks ago, and I've got them right in front of me, the third question was, do you co-create well? And
yes.
Today you're saying co-vision. Are you using those as synonyms?
No, co-vision is the first pillar.
That was sense make.
No, sense make is the second pillar.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the questions, not the pillars.
Oh, okay. Let me bring up my list of questions then, because I do have those written down as well.
I'm conflating the 5 questions and the 6 pillars again.
Yes, they don't map one to one.
The 5 questions wasn't co-vision. It was one of them was co-create. Do you co-create well?
Let me bring up those questions.
Co-visioning was not one of the questions.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I think I was following the following set. My questions were, do you think you sense make well with others? Do you think you focus well? Do you think you co-create well? Do you think you exhibit a good sense of humor? Do you think you disagree well?
Right, exactly.
Okay, so I flipped those into 2 other forms. In other words, who else here do you think sense makes well? Who else here do you think focuses well? Who else here do you think co-creates well? Who else here do you think exhibits a good sense of humor? Who else here do you think disagrees well? And then the next form of that is, who else here thinks you sense make well? Who else here thinks you focus well? Who else here thinks you co-create well? Who else here thinks you exhibit a good sense of humor? And who else here thinks you disagree well? Those were the 10 summary questions from my session 2 weeks ago.
One more question.
Yes.
Who thinks the second set of questions are harder to answer than the first set of questions?
Good question.
I do.
When you say the second set, you mean the last
What he
of the
just
three?
read.
The last
of the
5.
three.
The last 5.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, when he says, who thinks you,
Yes,
There were 3
as
sets,
opposed
so
to you, who do you think?
exactly. Because it involves your mental model of that person's mental model.
yeah, that's hard to do.
Okay. And where I say mental model, Barry says theory of mind. Okay.
Exactly.
And more than that, I mean, it does that, but also it brings up different emotions for certain people of assuming something, not really knowing if it's true.
Exactly. Right.
I've got a problem with that. Some people have a strong theory of mind, and I've got to name those people and point them out. And I don't want to do that because it feels like I'm being judgmental. And some people have a weak theory of mind, which means I'm in fear of people pointing me out for that position. So there's
Interesting that
anxiety
you
as
bring
well
that
as
up.
over.
Interesting, because the words strong and weak in that context are also interesting choices of words to me. You know? So, by the way, Stacy, when you go meta, I just have to share this one more time. I was in the
Okay.
AI program at Stanford, okay? And the whole, let's say, what do you call it? Motto? Is it a motto, something you believe in and you say all the time? It's like
Yeah.
a way you believe. An almost unwritten motto in the AI department was, anything you can do, I can do meta.
Yeah.
You know?
I love meta.
Me too.
And you know
Doesn't matter very
what?
much to me.
In crucial conversations, and rather than dealing with conflict directly, if you can go meta and achieve something that's, you know, positive for both, that's actually a very good strategy. Okay. So there's a definite skill in going meta.
I just
There's
put
also a
meta-
different mental masturbation going on too if you always go meta. In my
I just put a meta into the chat from nonviolent communication, where you're supposed to say, are you feeling such and such about an unmet need for so and so? And that's supposed to be a good way to do nonviolent communication. So I put in, are you feeling alexithymic because of an unmet need for empathy?
that helps communication.
It's a meta joke. It's a meta joke about nonviolent communication, because it, instead of putting in specific values, it puts in the name of the thing instead of the guess.
But you have to tell everybody what alexithymic means.
Well, that's the problem. Most people don't know that word. So
I mean,
when you have to
I had
explain a
looked-
joke, it's not funny.
There's an unmet need for recognition, and when somebody you admire says something disparaging about you because they don't want to do it up front of the use of humor, that can be cutting as well. It can be ego destroying and ego deflating experience.
Yeah, this is a rich field for conversation, but welcome, Tyra. I noticed that Tyra has just joined us. So I was wondering if one of us would like to give Tyra a context for the conversation here. I don't want it to always be me. I'm very opinionated.
I just want to know, did you really go to Santa Barbara on the Amtrak?
Did I?
No, Tyra.
Oh, Tyra.
Yes, and you'll crack up when I tell you what I did yesterday. So my husband and I have been surprising each other each week with a new adventure. And so we're driving forever. And we're way out in the country outside of LA. And we pull up to what looks like a horse ranch with a big teepee up on the hill. And he goes, well, that's where we're going. And so he goes, you get to pet the goats. Then they're going to give you a really nice dinner outside the teepee. And then you go inside the teepee and you have a tarot card reading. It's so Los Angeles. Like, I would have been happy with just the goats, you know, let alone like the boat. Oh, and a lot of wine. So I'm very like bleary-eyed. It was so hilariously Los Angeles, I could hardly stand it. And there was another 2 women there that were also part of this. They were so Los Angeles. All they did, well, they didn't even pet the goats. They just went in with all their rubber gloves and then proceeded for the next 2 hours to talk about their favorite plastic surgeons in Beverly Hills and who gives the best Botox and the best fillers. And then they're comparing their, while goats are jumping on them. So anyway, it was really fun. And yeah, Santa Barbara was great. We went on the train. And then we went to the Ritz-Carlton and pretended like we were guests. And they brought us towels and set us up in a nice lawn chair down by the ocean. It was great. So, and his surprise tonight is I'm taking him to a drive-in pop-up movie, a Star Wars film way out in the middle near Malibu. So we're trying to have a lot of fun. With that, I'm complete. Those are all
awesome.
Tyra adventures. Yeah.
So Tyra, Ventura is on its way to Santa Barbara. And there is a station that I know exactly where to pick you guys up if you ever want to go there again.
When we were going by. Like,
oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So, okay, I'll take the train to come and see you and you can come pick me up at the station.
Deal.
The Amtrak Coastline Express.
For reference, my closest Amtrak train station is about 25 minutes away. 27, somewhere in that range. Okay. For future planning, when I set up the Collaborology Institute up here, if I manage to do so. Otherwise, I'll have to do it someplace else. So, Tara, I don't believe you were here 2 weeks ago, but 2 weeks ago, I asked a series of 10 questions. And we've been talking about that because at the end of the session, I concluded with another 10 questions, which I asked people to think about until today. And that I think has actually been quite a rich, or at least for me, conversation. And there was one question I asked, which is, of these 10 that I first asked, which seem odd to you? And Stacy and Alex both pointed out the one that seemed odd, that I thought was odd. So I think there was some resonance I felt in those questions. So I don't want to do any more than that. If anybody would like to give Tyra more context, please do so.
Well, basically, the first 5 questions was asking us how we think we are at sense making, co-creating. Gee, I don't have it in front of me. If we disagree well, if we have a good sense of humor, laugh at ourselves. And the second set were, how do we think other people view us on those same things? That's the abridged version.
Sort of loses its punch, you know, when it's in the abridged version. But
I've been trained not to take up that much space.
Wait, whoa, there's another whole topic right there.
I've got a input for Tyra to bring her up to speed. And it is, if you're going to be at the session every week for 2 hours or 3 hours in some cases, then you might as well make it enjoyable. So the injection of humor might be through that end, because productively analyzing it from a director's point of view, how's it going to help the production line produce more programs, more equipment, more people, more staff, more analytics, and more data? Over.
Well, I
Anybody?
hope you all know that I have a wicked sense of humor. So I hope I definitely bring that to the room.
Stacy and I had a little interchange about the pros and cons of humor as well, in that it can break down, barriers to understanding, but it could also break down barriers to antagonism. So there was kind of a double-edged sword that Stacy brought up. And so I know that I used the word humor, and I did it deliberately, but in my mind, I was thinking about the lightheartedness where one could actually entertain another person's ideas, see where you agree and disagree, and play with that. Okay, that's the lightheartedness, or actually light-mindedness, that I would like to see, that I was calling humor, but I know that the humor word doesn't exactly capture that. But I wanted to, make that the entry point, okay, and sort of see if I could make that bridge. So, Tyra, the 5 questions specifically were: do you think you sense make well with others? Do you think you focus well? Do you think you co-create well? Do you think you exhibit a good sense of humor? And my first 5 questions were all about the humor, okay? This is the second set of 5. And then the last question was, do you think you disagree well? And then I was asking, aside from your own personal assessment, how do you connect with others? In other words, do you think others, and in particular, whoever you're interacting with, sense makes well, focuses well, co-creates well, has a good sense of humor, and disagrees well? And the flip side of that is, how does that person think of you? Does that person think that you sense make well, focuses well? Did you co-create well? Did you have a good sense of humor? Or that you disagree well? And that was the expansion behind just looking at yourself and now looking at how you possibly connect with others. And that was the motivation behind those questions. And that was what I asked people to think about from 2 weeks ago up until now. So, sorry, I just finished the recap for Tyra. Would anyone like to recap for Glenn?
Glenn
We're
was
just
here
going
2
over
weeks
the
ago.
questions.
Glenn was here, so he remembers, presumably,
That's right, Glenn was here 2
Yeah.
weeks
session
ago.
two weeks ago.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah, that you.
Do you remember the last 10 questions that I left with?
Yeah, I
second
think
set.
so. Yeah, it was about what you think others think and
Yeah.
that.
And
Yeah.
vice versa. Yeah.
So I wasn't actually prepared today to go into everybody sharing those responses, but Stacy actually thought that would be fun to hear. So I was actually trying to get Stacy to moderate the rest of this session.
What I actually said is I thought that, well, I didn't say all of this, but I actually thought watching how people would respond to the questions of how they think others think about them would be interesting in and of itself, as far as where the difficulties were, if they were able to do that, if they chose to do that, how uncomfortable did they feel, and if they were accurate.
Okay, so let me make this somewhat easy then. I'm actually very willing to be a guinea pig.
Me too.
So if people would like to share, their sense of, do I sense make well? Do I focus well? Do I co-create well? Do I have a good sense of humor? Do I disagree well? It'd be very illuminating for me. And I would take it, very constructively. If that would be a way to sort of get this conversation.
No. See, you're doing exactly where I thought the discomfort would be. You're trying to get others to tell you what they think of you. I'm saying the difficulty is in your assuming what others think about you. That is the difficult part. Like, so in my answer, when I went through all the people, when it came to Teese, I could say, I honestly don't know what he thinks of me. I just don't. He was just one of the people I didn't know. Maybe I felt a little bit more clear on what Kayla or Barry or you thought of me on some things. On some things, what Glenn thought of me. I wasn't sure on some things what Colin or Alex thought. depending on what it was.
I get your point. I'm actually thinking that if we actually do delve there, it might be difficult. And again, this is my assumption. It might be difficult to go too deep.
Yeah.
Whereas to go deep is really the interesting part. Maybe you and I could be the co-guinea pigs. We could be the co-pigs.
You know, if I could just share one thing so that you know what's underneath what I'm thinking in a different space, where people are sense making and they're putting together pictures of other individuals, and they're not getting the negative side because nobody really wants to bring that up. So they're not getting a clear picture, and that could be a problem. So that's what's underneath.
Okay, so you triggered me right now. Let me see, I use the word trigger, which is a year or 2 or 3 ago, there were multiple efforts to create these things called profiles, okay? And I understand that. That's huge value. It's great for people to connect and network and whatever. But I also got the sense that, you know, yeah, it was exactly what you just said. Nobody was going to say, yeah, but, you know, Sam's too blah, blah, blah. You know, nobody's going to actually say that on video unless they really hate me, which is okay, okay? But most people, you know, if they're still trying to maintain a convivial relationship, are not going to say Sam is too this or Sam is too that, or, you know, he just thinks of himself, blah, 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 right? So, and yet that's the stuff that I could examine and say, I got to level up. But if everybody says, oh, he's great about this, he's great about that, that's not a, you know, leveling up kind of a constructive suggestion. And yet a balance is necessary. Otherwise, you know, people could be like full of hubris or get completely demolished, you know, depending on their emotional state. So this is an interesting topic and interesting approach that we could discuss about how to get around this. Anyway, for me, posing the questions was not to lead towards a round robin sharing of all of this because of some of these sensitivities, but it was to see if one wanted to get that assessment and then individually reach out, you know, to some people like, hey, I thought about this. So I'm going to schedule something with Stacy so we can cover this one thing that I thought about. Or she might think that I'm blah, 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 blah. So let me go explore that. That was more the intent behind those 10 questions at the end of the session. But seeing as how you did spend some time on it, that's what and I'm saying this sincerely, Stacy, think we could get huge value out of you moderating the rest of the session and leading us through these questions. But I'm not going to press it. You know, I've already said it. I'm not going to, you know, press it. But I just think that, you know, you may be prepared to go where I was not prepared to go.
Well, if I were to do that, just one way that I would do it a little bit separate from the questions, and maybe you could find a way to tie it in. I might say something like, you know, pick somebody in the room that you share something with. What is it that you share, and do that, you know, with each person.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't know if that would all be done at once. I used to vision that the first 5 minutes, that if I got to ask a question, that would be a question I might ask. And little by little, we would learn about people, and it might be something negative, might be something positive, but it's something that I'm already saying, I do this too. I see this in you. I have this.
Are you saying in general or focused around these particular 5 questions or 6 pillars?
I mean, again, one was a thought that I've had for 3 years. So that was in general. And now I'm wondering if that could be useful in some way with your questions, or not necessarily. I mean, you know, we could, you know, we could do it like a group thing, like who thinks, you know, if we could do it anonymously, where, you know, pick the person that is, that most, you know, is, I don't want to use the word best, that most people think is, you know, the funniest or best at disagreeing, or, I mean, I don't know, just some way to not make it competitive, and not make it where there's a right or wrong answer. And also make it that it's okay to say, I don't know.
Yeah. Glenn, now that you've been here a few minutes, maybe you have some thoughts on this since you were here 2 weeks ago.
Well, I was wondering about, since you mentioned this idea of profiles, and you know, it's one of the ideas I've been very interested in, and those profiles will be skewed towards the positive. That's the design of them that I have in mind, and I think it's also a natural dynamic in this kind of that it's easier to say something you like about somebody. So I guess my thought is that could that work? Maybe that could work to have profiles who will focus on the best qualities that people have, and somehow that it's almost implied in that there's always a room for improvement and development. So you sort of never lose that. Yeah, Stacy, what are you thinking?
I have an idea. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you think Glenn is at conflict resolution? And then if everybody put a number, we would then, no, well, privately, I'm saying, if everybody put a number privately, then we could get an average, and we could do that for each person and then get an average. That might.
Yeah, how do we do it anonymously
would that
here?
help us? But would
What?
that help us?
I think that
It
would
would
make
help.
me feel really insecure.
it
I'm
would-
already
it would-
insecure.
Sorry,
Like, I don't want to
sorry.
be rated.
No, I'm just saying that the idea of getting an average among the group, I think it's more objective, because, you know, some people already have issues with other people, and this way, when you get an average, and the reason I said 1 through 10 is so that one person couldn't like skew it so badly.
Yeah. You know, just riffing off that suggestion, there is an ability to do this in an anonymous way if we use a third-party service like SurveyMonkey. So I do have, or I used to have, I have to look up the password, a SurveyMonkey account. And if we wanted to set it up anonymously, we could say, how many people want to be in, because we don't want to include people that don't want to be in it, okay? And then say, okay, those of us who want to be in it, what are the questions? Set it up 1 to 10 and have it automatically tabulate and send the round response with anonymity. We could actually send it around that way. But I'm not proposing it, I'm just saying there's a way to do it if we really wanted to do it, okay? For me, the value, yeah, go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, well, I guess why would we want to do it? What's the purpose here?
I'll tell you my purpose. My purpose is I'm full of shit, okay? I'm full of myself, okay? I think I'm the best at everything, okay? So I would like to actually know from people who are serious and who love me and who are, you know, critical thinkers and who are collaborators. I want to hear what they think of my shit. Because, you know, if I'm just full of my own shit, you know, I'm just thinking, wow, la-di-da, you know, I got everything handled. But I really would like and respect feedback from people that I respect. So it's not a matter of whether or not this is going to be painful. It's a matter of, wow, you know, here's where I could grow.
Do you think that the necessary nuance for that kind of feedback could be valuable? Could that nuance be conveyed in?
It's a good question, because this is dangerous, right? Not everybody may, you know, take these questions well, and I'm not a professional at, you know, wording some of these questions. I'm not a psychologist, you know, I'm not a neurophysiologist or behaviorist, you know, I'm not Robert Sapolsky, far from it, okay? Anyway, sorry, I was in the middle, but let's say Colin and then Stacy have their hands up. And
Yeah,
then
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
you hear me? I don't know. Okay, I got a weird headphone going on here. I'm feeding Binky some rice right now. My little fella here, he's helping me out. So yeah, I'm just thinking that the best that we can do for each other as far as criticism is to criticize what we're passionate about and what we're trying to bring. I think we can fill in the gaps for people if we had a context and a goal and a bit of a mission. Otherwise, we're just picking apart everybody's terminology. I got games for that too if you want to play those, but you know, it's really getting into the context of what the other person is trying to do, whether you feel that mission. And even if you don't feel it, you still might be able to add something. I don't think that we're all here to collaborate with each other one-on-one. Who could collaborate with me? What could you do with me? Like, really, think about it. What could you do with me? I'll end with that.
Stacy?
So going back to Glenn's concerns, I think that maybe you could share the results with the person privately. If they choose to share it, that's up to them. And I think it's useful also for people to get a sense if people really view them the way they think they're being viewed.
Then Alex and then Tyra.
Tyra?
I've noticed that there's people who show up regularly every week, and we call you a fan club.
Sorry, that wasn't audible. There was a lot of noise there, Alex.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I was touching the microphone. Yeah, the fan club issue. If people don't appreciate your knowledge and your humour, they wouldn't come here every week and listen to you discuss stuff with them and point out their inadequacies. I feel cut up sometimes when people point out my inadequacies, but I value the input simply because it illuminates work I need to do on myself. If you don't get that feedback, you're missing out on valuable information. That's all. Sorry. Over.
Okay, Tyra, then Glenn.
I liked what Colin had to say about with each person, how could I collaborate with them? And I like that. I like thinking about how could I collaborate with Colin, or Stacy or Glenn or Kayla? You know, I like that approach. I think I know a lot of you well enough over the last, I think I've spent 2 years now with you guys, maybe something like that.
Wow, really?
I think so, yeah, almost 2 years. And I think each one of you brings your shininess to this place each week, day after day. And so I like that. I like thinking like, how could I collaborate with Colin? You know, how could we bring our talents together?
Anyone else? Kayla, you appeared. Oh, Glenn, you're next. And then Kayla.
Okay, well, this ties in with a question that I've been wondering about quite a while, because I've noticed, as a sort of a general impression from my own life and from what I've seen in other exchanges, that criticism tends to yield negative results. It just tends to not work very well. In the cases where it does work, it's almost in spite of the criticism. And I've experienced so many times that when I have well-intentioned criticisms that are delivered, either from me or from others, for some reason it doesn't lead to very constructive places. So one of the ideas I've had is, could there be a mode of feedback where we may not need criticism at all, where we just entirely leave that mode of communication where one kind of comes in a sort of a judgmental position of somebody else, and you say, "Oh, this was not so good," and then you sort of indicate what could be better. It feels like the results haven't been good. It feels like a complicated way, sort of conceptually, because if I want someone to be better, why are we not speaking about what better would mean instead of speaking like a focus on what's lacking or what's been wrong? And this was this idea of appreciation. What if you appreciate people as they are for whatever qualities they have, and you tend to focus on their sort of strengths, and what if you then have the idea of potential, because it's always there. I mean, however good you get at anything, you always discover you could get even better. Just like if you learn something about one area, you discover it's connected to other areas and so on. So I'm wondering if there could be a much simpler way to give feedback where we build on our strengths and then we kind of build into potential. And so what if we could take it even further? Yeah, Tyra.
Well, Kayla, I think may have wanted to.
Okay.
We do Kayla and then Tyra? No? Okay. Tyra, sorry.
Yeah, I was sort of, yeah, that was the main idea I wanted to mention.
I don't want to remember that one. Yeah, Tyra.
So Glenn, what I wrote down when you said that is, rather than us assessing each other in that kind of way, for us to do a self-assessment. So maybe I could get up and say, this is what I can do better within this group. And I can listen better, or, you know, whatever the situation is. I like the idea of self-assessment, where we each come up with how we can be better within this group, and it follows your questions. And also I wanted to say, in child psychology, one of the earliest things I learned that really stuck with me was it takes one insult to a child. You insult that child. It takes 10 compliments to make up for that one insult, because that's all the child hears is the insult. And so that is something to keep in mind too, is, you know, you may have this entire beautiful opinion about a person, including perhaps where they could grow, but they're probably going to only hear that portion of it, and all that good stuff may not even register, because the mind loves to chew on that negative stuff. So that was my thoughts in relation to what Glenn said. And also, can I just say also, for me, I am always in survival mode. I'm not good at collaborating with people. I'm good at talking with people. I don't have the energy to collaborate. Like, I'm just trying to get through my day. And so to assess that and to say, oh, you know, Tyra doesn't collaborate. Well, you might not know the whole story. You know, it's not that I don't want to collaborate. It's just I may not feel like collaborating physically. You know, I'm just trying to get through my day. So there's my little tidbit.
So
I think, yeah.
just a little bit of context, Tyra. 2 weeks ago, I was asking the questions in the context of self-assessment. This is a 2 week afterward, where it was trying to see where are the connections that we could be building. And it was the connections that I was really interested in, not so much the criticism, you know? And it was in that light that I was asking those questions. So it was in that light that I said, I'm not here to ask everyone to share what they thought about those last 10 questions. It's the possibility of connection that excites me, okay? And on your second point, by the way, I feel I've already collaborated with you to start an import-export business, Tyra, you know? So that I thought worked, you know? So that wasn't difficult. You know?
Well, you know, and I've collaborated with a lot of you on a lot of different ideas and things over you know, these last year or so, without even trying. It's just a natural extension of the relationships that I've incurred here. You know, I talk to Jazz a couple times a week. and we just talk about my diet, stuff like that. So, no, I feel like when I think about it, I have had a lot of collaborations.
And this is, it's an energy exchange when we're having the conversations. And I just think it's been so many great moments when you just come in and you just said some beautiful common sense stuff that just brings us right back to what it's really about. And that's a kind of a collaboration too.
Yeah. One of your superpowers is changing the subject.
Yep. I've got a superpower.
Tyrus. She can sense when a conversation is going off the rails and redirect us in a way that is actually, very positive.
Yeah.
Is that avoidance or is that like being a helper?
No, actually,
that's what a Libra I am. Like, I want everybody to be happy.
You and me both, sister. We're both Libras.
Focusing. Tyra brings us back on focus.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, that's a really nice thing to say. I appreciate that. And I didn't realize I did that at all. So
Yeah, focus is one of my 5 questions, by the way, Tyra.
Really? I feel so unfocused. That's so funny. I feel just the opposite. Yeah.
I've got
Alex has his hand up. Yeah.
I've got an idea for a nameplate that goes underneath your name on your door. When you're on a ship, if you walk through a ship, through the cabins, you see the names of the staffers on the door. And if you're a janitor, it says janitor. If you're the cook, it says cook. And if you're the captain, it'll say captain. You know where you are. And because you know where you are, that's a ship that will run smoothly. If you can find the right people to do the right job at the right time, and everything works clockwork-like mechanism that's smooth and flowing. Because of those names are because they're specified correctly, and it works like that. So Tyra's got this name plate, and it's coordinator, conversation coordinator. But it could change, it's just my impression. That's not the impression of everybody in the group. You'll all have your own. But when we nail these things down, it makes the operation a much more easier thing to smooth, to get over the humps, etc. Over.
So that was my title, Alex, on my door, on my office, was a coordinator, youth and family and greenhouse coordinator. So when you said that, I really laughed. But yeah, I am good at that. It doesn't mean I want to do it, but I just will naturally step in and do it if nobody else is.
There's a danger though. We have our self-esteem, and if it gets blown out of proportion, it becomes egotistical. So we've got to keep an eye on those sort of things too. Over. Humility.
It's interesting that you mentioned a ship metaphor, Alex, because a ship definitely has very clear top-down structure and rules of engagement, to the point where the captain has almost absolute authority over what happens on that ship. So in some cases, those metaphors might apply. This might actually be an interesting case where that would be a challenging metaphor for me to apply here. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you. How's everyone doing?
Good to see you, Josh.
See you. I'm going to turn on my camera in a sec.
Today is Kusella's birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yo, how did you know that?
Because she's on my friends list, and Facebook tells you when your friends are having a birthday.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, we're getting ready to head over to see her parents and my parents. Thank you for remembering that, Barry.
Wait, 2 separate events or one event?
We've been celebrating all week, but yeah, today's her actual birthday.
Ongoing celebration.
I was just thinking, were the parents going to be together, or were you going to go to 2 separate locations?
Oh, sorry, Sam. Yeah, we're gonna try. This is the goal is for her parents to meet my parents, so we're trying to do that.
That's a meaningful meeting.
Yeah, that's what she wanted for her birthday. So we're trying to make that happen before the kid comes.
Awesome.
I think I was thinking, you know, the Open Global Mind, they've been having a lot of really interesting conversations for similar realm as these. And then in the first meeting, they asked the question to each person, what is your superpower? And I think that's a very good question, because if we could really understand each of us, what is my superpower, and we could see it in one another and build on it, that might be a very beneficial focus, to have a kind of a tendency to focus on each person's superpower.
That's really important, Glenn, because in my metaphor about the ship situation, you've got to make important decisions out in the sea, in the ocean, otherwise the ship will go down and you lose the crew, you lose everything. So that's why they need somebody who's best able to be the captain, And it's if you know what your superpower is, you've got an idea of what you like it to be, because none of us really have a real superpower. There's ideas we got in our mind about our abilities or lack of ability. So if we label each other's idea of what their superpower is, what do you think Sam's superpower is? What do you think Stacey's superpower is? If we go around the room, that would be a good exercise, because it gives us a label. It gives us a clear understanding of what we think about each other.
One understanding.
Well, what if we actually manage to figure out what are our superpowers to some extent? Because I think that most people I know, there's some unique talent they have. Some have discovered it to a larger degree than others, but if we could really actually discover it, and it's not just a label then, right? It's actually a reality that we're trying to discover.
I love that idea. I think it sounds really fun. Go for it, Stacey.
Sort of connected to what Glenn's saying, I've often thought of that it would be very interesting when looking at a project to determine which superpowers and what amounts were needed for a given project.
You ever used to watch the show Mission Impossible?
Peter Graves.
I was too
Exactly.
young. I saw it, but I don't remember
Oh, you're such a, oh,
ending it.
really? Okay. So, yeah, the scene I'm thinking about is Peter Graves is always given this mission, you know, impossible, too difficult.
Yeah, well, that
Nobody
part
ever
I-
wants to do it. But he gets his mission, and of course, you know, the message burns up, you know, after he hears the tape. It was an audio tape, by the way. And then he goes through his extensive personnel file and picks out 3 or 4 portfolios of people who have those talents that are necessary for that particular mission.
Yeah.
Usually ends up being the same 3 or 4 people, but.
Well, and just one more thing, you know, many of us have more than one superpower, and sometimes we don't want to use our number one superpower. Sometimes we're tired of using that. We want a break. We want to use something, and we want to use a secondary superpower.
Yep.
So that's why I'd rather define the project. And then, yeah.
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, I was done. Just that I like the idea. I would prefer or think it would be interesting to see how things would work if the project rather than the person were defined first.
Can I offer a joke? Possibly bad taste. I identify as a billionaire, but don't ask me to prove it.
Is that funny?
Yes, because to me it is. Okay.
Why? I don't get it.
Because of the reaction Jen just got.
I define myself as a billionaire.
I like
I identify myself.
Identify, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Here in the Pacific Northwest, just an aside, I encountered way more people here, especially in the younger generation, who identify as they, them, or other than in California, where almost everybody identifies themselves as either he, him, or she, her. But here in Washington, it's much, much more fluid. And of course, you know, when you go up to someone and they say, I identify as he, him, no one says, prove it. When somebody says, I identify as she, her, no one says, prove it, right? We accept how they want to accept. So my joke was, I identify as a billionaire, just don't ask me to prove it. Which is funny to me, but maybe not to others. That's why I said it was in poor taste.
In Cuba, you'd be a billionaire. In Venezuela, I don't know, you know, the currencies.
Not really. I'm still in debt. I'm still in debt.
Hey, I identify as a Wallacoin trillionaire. It's the radical new currency. It's a completely fluid currency. It's called the Wallacoin.
You set the price every day, right?
Yeah, so I could give you guys a few billion Wallacoins now if you want, because it's totally abstract. So
did you just say you're going to give me a Wallacoin? Because I will take that.
Okay. I just gave
he's not going to give you one. He's going to give you a billion, Josh.
Okay,
I heard. That's why I'm so excited. That's why I'm like, yo, a billion Walla. I'm a Walla millionaire.
You're a Walla billionaire now, because I just gave you a billion Wallacoins that I just created in my mind. So
yeah, but Glenn, no. I want the wallet. I want to have the password. I want to get, like, this is for real, right? You're not just messing with my.
You don't need any of that. All you need is just
the wallet costs $2 billion.
Hey, I think we need Tyra superpower.
That's what I was thinking.
Focus.
Did you just hear me sigh?
See, you do it without even talking.
I know. So I was asked once in a business, you know, when I was a coordinator, what my superpower was. And I really sincerely said, I can make 150 different art projects out of a paper towel holder. And I feel that's valuable because it shows that I can use a common thing that goes in the garbage and make it into something else. So that's my superpower. So if anybody needs a toilet paper project for their kids, I'm your gal.
Imagineering.
Yeah.
Okay.
I found a YouTube video showing it recycle plastic by ramming it into bottles, which was what Dave was talking about on the show the other day. Over.
Okay. So, you know, the questions were interesting to me, and the meta discussion around the questions has even been very, very fascinating to me. And it kind of shows what factors come up when we ask these questions, even just in our own minds, you know, let alone share what we think of each of these questions. I know Josh is probably out of context. 2 weeks ago, I asked 5 or 10
It's
questions.
okay. I'll pick up quick. You don't have to explain it. It's all right.
Josh is awesome, even out of context, so it's fine.
I love you, Glenn.
Let me ask a meta question. Did asking those questions help us in creating any of these connections? Or is it just getting us more mired down into the pitfalls? The meta discussion is certainly, it felt to me, around the pitfalls.
Could you say something about your purpose, what you would like to see achieved?
The reason for me asking the self-assessment questions 2 weeks ago, and then ending with the 10 questions about who else thinks of us that way, or what we think of others, in the possibility of collaboration, a possibility of sense making. possibility of co-visioning, the possibility of taking action together and co-creating. That's the intent. That was the intent. The motivation was to build those connections, to really see, who we resonated well with, who we actually can see or imagine ourselves doing things with, and then trying to see if we can actually get some action. We haven't gotten to the action part yet. So that's why I started with a sense of humor. I started with the pillars. And then I was ending with, how did that network grow? Glenn, you got something to say?
Well, I guess some of you saw yesterday, I was on a little bit of a roll in the chat with this topic of behavior. It's one of my favorite topics. And because it kind of relates to everything, it's like a hyper topic. So one of the questions that I've been wondering is, what is on the spectrum of what we would call good behaviors or possible great behaviors? And it's a very peculiar thing that in our culture, we never speak about that. We only speak about behavior up to the point of acceptable behavior, but everything above that, it's not even mentioned. And of course, it will be said, depends on the context, right? It depends on what you want to achieve, etc. But is that all it is? Or are there some kinds of behaviors that work well across various contexts? And I think that our question of discussions about agreements and sort of what we want, who we want to be, might sort of be something in that direction.
Start us off, Glenn. Give us an example.
Okay, I'll give an example. This is speculative ideas, but I'll just put it out there. It actually builds on something Barry talked about these smooth developments instead of like this. I would claim that more often than not, high quality behavior includes smooth bodily movements. Maybe. Instead of being very abrupt, if you move smoothly, slowly, often it's gonna have good results. It's gonna have less chance of accidents, better chance of a positive atmosphere. Smiling is often a good behavior. Maybe not too much. It depends on the situation, but there might be some behaviors which are generally very versatile that you can have in many occasions, in many circumstances. And it's obviously related to attitudes. It's a very rich subject. So I'm not gonna claim any of this is simple. It's incredibly rich. But I just wanna put that question on the table. Like, could there be some behaviors which generally work well, maybe even what we could call generative behaviors, that there's certain ways of being that we sort of want to cultivate and learn and recognize when they happen. It just feels like a piece of the puzzle that has not been spoken much about, but I think it's related to everything we're talking about.
To interrupt, Glenn, I think you're getting really close to the notion of what you would need to adapt behavior in a conversation. And that's what I'm here for, difficult conversation. I'm not here for connection, although I appreciate what connection I get. I'm not here to explain to you my childhood, or I'm not here for therapy. And that conflicts with a lot of people. And that is another layer of difficulty, of premise. I'm not here to be taught everything that I don't know. Right? Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Sam, you had a thought there, Sim?
I'm going to riff on your idea because I like it. I'll give you one of my possibly OCD habits, okay? When I'm in the kitchen, actually when I'm anywhere, okay, I try to make as little noise as possible. I don't like to let the cabinets slam. I actually, let the cabinets go all the way to about an inch or so, or half an inch, and then I let, the felt pad gently touch so that it generates as little noise as possible. When I open the oven or close the oven, I don't let it just slam. I like to, just manually close it so it makes as little noise as possible. And when the dishes got to get pulled out of the dishwasher, I don't like the plates clanging against each other, right? I try to make that as low noise as possible. And to me, that's part of the smoothness that you're talking about. In fact, I recognize it as part of Tai Chi. Tai Chi is all about trying to get your body to be connected, to be smooth, to be balanced, to work, and move with intention as opposed to, randomly and jerkily. So Tai Chi has always got these lessons that I pick up, and then it ends up manifesting in not making much noise in the kitchen or in the bathroom or any place else. So that's one way I wanted to riff on your suggestion there, which I like a lot. Over.
One thing I should mention is that one of the reasons that I'm so interested in this is that I want to find an approach that can deal with complexity and that's capable of dealing with reality as it actually is, which means I have to deal with an enormous complexity and many unknowns. But my own behavior, at least, is one thing I can control. If I can control anything, it's sort of my way of doing anything. So the idea is basically, if I can some way or another feel that I have that covered, whatever that might mean. Now that's an enormous question, but at least I have a conscious relationship to that, then that might be a kind of intelligent way to deal with complexity, where I don't have to assume that I know exactly what will happen and what exactly is happening, but I'm sort of going with the flow of the events, and I'm sort of always focused on what I can influence. So this is also another aspect of this, that maybe a conscious attitude to behavior, one's own behavior, is actually a way to deal with enormous complexity. It's like a simplifier in a sense. Does that make sense?
Can I state it in a 10-second blurb, which is, in a complex system, you don't want to even add more entropy to it, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I like that, Glenn, thanks.
So,
Stace.
So going back to the original questions, I also think as an added measure, it's helpful to know who who thinks of me the way I think of myself. Where, who do I feel sees me the way I see myself? I think that is really important too, especially when it comes to working together and avoiding misunderstandings and all those other things.
Have you heard of gifting? They do
What?
a lot of gifting on Enlivening Edge, where somebody's talked about their life's work, and then the rest of the group go around and do a gifting session on what they have gained, what they've appreciated about that person. And it boosts your self-esteem. A lot of the time, it gives you a wonderful boost for your self-esteem. But sometimes you learn things as well. If you can avoid being cut by the things you are surprised to learn about yourself coming from others, then you can get over that hump. You do manage to change or make the changes necessary to move along further on that path.
Tyra, and then me.
I like that idea of gifting. That really came home to me. I had an auntie who died very tragically of alcoholism.
I'm reminding you.
And we had the funeral for her, and her close family was there and a couple of friends, and no one really had anything to say about her or her life other than she liked to party and she liked to cook. And that really struck me as, a young woman. I just had my son, and I thought, I want people to stand up when I die and have something more to say than she liked to smoke pot, and so I try to live my life the way that I hope would make a great funeral. Does that make sense? Like, I live my life in a way that I know people will get up at my funeral and definitely have something to say about me. And I also like the fact that when we tell people how much we appreciate about them, we're giving it to them while they're alive rather than when they're dead. It drives me crazy with funerals. We all stand up and say, all these things about them. And it's like, I want to say those things to people right now. I just found out before I got on here that a little girl that I had in my YMCA program for 5 years was just killed in a car accident. She was 14 years old. So when you think about that, life is so short. I may not even be here tomorrow. So I get tears in my eyes thinking about this little girl and her dad and her brother, now that it's just so bloody short, everybody, so we have to really just love the shit out of each other and our neighbors and our environment. And that person walking down the street who looks like they're having a really bad day, you can say hi to those people, because at the end of the day, if I'm dead today, I want people to know that I was a good person, or at least that I was engaged. So I like that gifting now, that's good stuff.
That reminds me of Stephen Covey's first habit. Begin with the end in mind. Anybody else with any other topics on this connection and question business? Because I wanted to reserve some time also for Stacy to ask at least one question.
I'm good.
You're good?
I'm good.
Josh.
I just wanted to say that when I first met Stacy here on Zoom, her camera was awful, and now it's amazing. It's like the best camera I've ever seen ever. And
Really, this is a brand new computer.
Can I just tell you, you made my heart so happy. Like, just all these years, I'm like, Stacy, please just get a new computer. And now you look like you're like, and Alex is like, what is the, like, he stepped his game up. Like, I think he's setting the bar.
Backgrounds,
yeah. Yeah. I really, congratulations.
Glad you're happy,
Stacey.
Josh.
Yeah, congratulations. I'm just saying, I hear you clearly when you used to cut out like this. It's amazing. Like, we've stepped up our communication level.
And Can we all take a moment to wish Kusela a happy birthday since she's here with us?
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
Do you have any words, Kusela?
Yeah, Tyra, I wanted to say thank you for the art piece that you sent to Joshua and I. And thank you for what you were saying earlier about just living in the moment now. So that's how I'm going to celebrate today and every day. Thank you. And we will be parents in like 3 months. So
How many months?
3 more months.
We just went from cortisol down there to somebody's pass away to up there to somebody's had a birthday in the space of a few seconds. Over.
I also want to thank Tyra, what you mentioned there, about funeral living. You say yeah, it really reminds me that funeral is one of the rituals where we really celebrate a person's life. And I've always found it to be a very beautiful ritual, a very meaningful, strong ritual the times I've been at these ceremonies. But at the same time, as you say, the person's already gone then. So I would like to see some more of that while a person's alive, the way to celebrate each other while we're here.
Birthdays?
That is
I
an
got-
indication, yeah.
Sorry.
Colin, did you?
Yes, please. I'm listening, but I'm also very sidetracked here because I'm taking care of the little one here. We're reading books and singing. But I heard what you said, Glenn, about, and I like how Sam doubled down on the behavior thing. And I think behavior. That's right. You tell them. The behavior's been, I think, a good theme. It's important. And the question is, how could the people adapter I speak of, or conversation adapter better, bring you back around when you do lose, you do start to act bad? Like, how can that be filtered or adapted to so you don't fall out of the game, basically through your own bad habits or bad behavior, kind of knock yourself out of the conversation? How can people keep you in without actually trying to destroy you? That takes sincerity to want to keep asking you sincere questions. And if you get mad because of questioning, there's got to be something happen there. That seems to be an inflection point where you don't want to answer that question. And Sam said that the questions we had today might be a little sensitive. So I think that's where we need the tools to assist us and leaning in and support, so that you don't misjudge what somebody said as laughing at you instead of laughing with you. Anyway.
Thanks for bringing us back to the question. I'm going to do my checkout now. And that is the connection that I was hoping to seed with those questions. Let me restate it this way. The 10 questions I was asking was to sort of figure out, okay, who do you resonate with? Who do you think understands you? Who do you think you understand? Who do you think has the proper lightheartedness or light-mindedness or sense of humor that you would love to engage with? So rather than asking people to share their responses to those questions, let me ask you the following. In the contemplation and consideration of those questions, did that compel you to any specific action? That to me is an interesting one that ties together with behavior. In other words, if I said, wow, I've always thought this about Glenn. Yeah, I think he really does want to co-vision. I'm going to set up a one-on-one with Glenn and talk about co-visioning, which I've actually had on my list, Glenn, for several weeks, and I just haven't done it yet. So I'm saying, rather than sharing the specific responses on each of those 10 questions, I'm checking, and not for answers here, but just, for your own purposes, do those questions compel you to any decision, or better yet, action? Over.
For me, the only action it had was this discussion here. That's the action. That's what I enjoy. That's what I want to add.
I've got a question about the entropy. When you add more entropy to a complex system, it's more difficult to control. If control is the objective, then that's not a good thing. But if you want it to flow and with its own control without any director, it's a different situation. It's a different kind of corporation. it's more like a tribal thing that's not directed. It's growing by itself. It's organically growing by itself, and that's dangerous because, like the virus, it could take over the organism and kill it. So I think it's a good idea to follow the direction from the higher thought patterns that come from our heart thinking and our mind connected. Over.
Tyra.
So I'm a little late to the party as far as, you know, that 2-week span of what have you done. But what this conversation is sparking in my mind is my friend Godwin, who in Ghana, he got accepted to I guess a college in Canada. He applied and he got accepted, and I haven't talked to him live, but he's very frustrated because he doesn't have the money for the tuition. And so I said, what about a GoFundMe page? You know, that kind of stuff. So I'd really like to be able to just be a friend to Godwin and provide some insights on how he might be able to earn this money to get him there, because he's got an amazing opportunity. And if he stays in Africa, he believes he won't have this kind of opportunity again. And I'd love to see him be able to, you know, follow through on this dream. But I don't know. I'm terrible at raising money for myself, let alone for somebody else. So if anybody has any thoughts on how Godwin might be able to raise the money, then please just privately message me. But that would be a great collaboration, I think.
Tyra, did you say that you'd never spoken to him live?
No, I have spoken to him live many times. We collaborated on necklaces that I bought and had him have someone design, and Sam was part of that too. But yeah, but I haven't lately. I haven't connected.
Yeah, it's hard for me to relate. I have done a little bit more investigation, but the getting the interest from that part of the world, that's a different kind of challenge. Michael Josefitz was in that challenge, and I worked a little bit with him on some ideas. I think education here is important for us and them. And I've always thought, like Michael Josefitz, if they can't come here, why don't they bring it there? Like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what kind of a quality education they could set up to start. You know, this information is becoming quite available, and you don't really have to technology, it takes money, but I'll end there because it's a big rabbit hole. But it is something that I find interesting in this group as if we had lots of money, it would definitely be the charity I would pick, charity of education. Anyway. And I think what you find out is once you start wanting to educate people, you find out the other difficulties they have, which is usually, you know, getting clean water, and, you know, that stuff ends up coming into the, so there's a whole context of understanding the system of the problem. So yeah, and Sam was talking about somebody who just needed enough money for a coffee to do something. It's like, you know, it doesn't sound realistic, but somehow it is.
For the record, the initial amount I thought was actually incorrect. It was not 49 cents. It was actually $26.
That's the same number, really. Comes to what you're talking about, really. It's not $2,000. It's not like 500. Like that's a meal, right? 57 cents isn't a meal. That's a that might be a candy. I don't know what
it is in some countries.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I can't eat, like I saw some documentaries on Taiwan where they're eating some, you know, very interesting cuisine. I don't know how long it would take me to adapt to that kind of a thing, and just that kind of a mindset of understanding you know, what it's like to have walk a mile in their shoes, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah, I'll end there. It's a gulf and a divide, and it's definitely somewhere where Michael Joseph, you know, put his stake into. And I'd like to feel that we have his spirit coming along with us too, even though I'm not supernatural minded. I still think the spirit of Michael is in our group, and has affected us all.
Yeah,
Even the people that don't show up all the time.
if I want a meal, I'll have to work in the field.
Well, guys, I'll have to log off. It's a sort of a Easter evening here. But,
Happy
yeah.
Easter.
I was a little late today, but it was good to just check in with you. So, yeah.
Happy
Have a
Ishtar.
good day.
Blessings, Glenn.
Easter is a fecundity event, is it not?
A what kind of event?
It's a celebration of birth, right? And it was not originally about Jesus. That's why the egg is not about Jesus, really. It's
What
about
was the
Ishtar.
word you used? What was the
Ishtar.
word?
Easter's about don't count your chickens.
The word
He
was
said,
fecundity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, folks, I'm checking out. I'm too tired to carry on, and I can't concentrate when I'm tired. Over.
Bye.
Okay, bye everybody. It was good to see all of you. Good to see you, Kayla. I see you lurking back there. Okay. Love you
What crepes
guys.
did you make? Are the crepes done?
Yeah,
What?
the crepes are done. I put
Crepes?
and then I did whipped cream. I make my own cream.
Oh,
Not that it's like awesome or any, well, it is awesome because I can eat like an entire jar of whipped cream if I make it. But they're done.
thanks all. I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.
One.